My name is Raj Sen. I'm the founder and the CTO at Arcion. Arcion is a distributed platform to do database replication. We connect databases together. So, we recently partnered with PingCAP. So, I think I'm the only one outside of PingCAP today to do show something about PingCAP. So the demo is at the end. Prior to starting this company, I worked for close to 2 decades in database companies like Sybase, SAP, Oracle, Single Store. So 7 years back, I did a tutorial in a database conference on HTAP. I guess now I'm happy to see that the whole space is getting revamped, and thanks to the speaker from PingCAP actually, who had a slide at the end saying query optimizer in HTAP system is very hard. So I feel good because I published 6 papers in that area in the last 10 years. So I feel good that the whole space is coming back in some way. But today's talk is not about databases; it's about connecting databases. So I think so that we discussed a lot of technology stuff. So let's go back and cool down a little bit on what is indexing, what kind of stats you need. So I started my career this side in the first generation database. I worked in the transactions processing team at Sybase. Nobody knows about that company now, but still it's one of the largest OLTP database inside SAP, more than $1 billion in revenue. So Wall Street runs on Sybase. So the thing is everything that was talked in the previous, like the first session, SQL data model was obviously the choice at that time. But it's all monolithic and distributed environments. I think that's the key thing that changed in the second generation of databases, where like some MongoDB and the Hadoop thing, where okay, SQL is bogus. Now we come back to all of this kind of stuff. I think there is a parallel talk going on in another room where somebody from Pinterest is talking about migrating from HBase to Pinterest. So kind of this transition from non-SQL to SQL is happening in another room also. There is a real talk. So, but I mean, speed over SQL was that Hadoop, and thing going on. I mean, as a database developer working in Oracle and Sybase, we were angry, but but everybody is talking Hadoop. So I was very distressed, disheartened at that time for the 5-6 years that Silicon Valley was constantly talking nonsense. But good times are back. SQL is back, real database stuff is back, optimizers are back. So very happy to be part of this conference, and thanks to the PingCAP team for holding this awesome event. I have a big fan of unifying transactions and analytics. 8-9 years back, I quit Oracle and joined a startup called MySQL at that time. Right now, they're known as Single Store. In a talk, first talk, there was a diagram in which a lot of vendors were shown. I think it would be good for the PingCAP guys to add a vendor called Single Store there, which is actually a very good stable player in the. So as whatever the paper talks, it's good to add all the vendors that you think are competitive, right? Just not. So I think this whole, if you look about 3 pillars here, like distributed transactions in the various forms in the OLTP space, CockroachDB is adding something, Yugabyte is doing something, PingCAP obviously is using multi-RAF to do all the, leader and follower stuff, real-time processing. Mate Zaharia this morning spoke a lot about, how timeliness is important from moving data across systems, and we actually, as a company, Arcion is a big partner of Databricks. But the fascinating part is there is a section of workload and data where you have to merge the world of analytics and transactions. And I feel StarTree is also they also added Upsert, as they mentioned. Now they're adding LSM based merges. So I think everybody is going to end up with the same set of technologies in 3 years. So it's not like these things have not existed in the past. I think there's a SAP HANA, Oracle. I worked in two of those three actually of those technologies that you mentioned, SAP HANA, then Oracle, then single store. So I have seen the world where doing transaction analytics was important. The problem why those platforms, at least according to me as a database developer, like it didn't get much traction, is no one thought about making the whole thing scalable and to be able to handle more than 1 terabyte. The world of SAP HANA and Oracle was always like 1 terabyte sweet spot. Beyond that, you move to Teradata or somewhere else. So I think this is where I think that whole, I believe there's a huge opportunity where more operation analytics, and if you give, so it's like Uber, right? Somebody mentioned Uber in the morning, like okay, till Uber came, you didn't know that there is a way to connect to somebody to pick you up, right? So with these platforms, I believe a lot of operation analytics will happen, and I think we'll go back to the same technology challenges where how do you do storage differently on the row store and column store, how you train optimizers to figure out where to go, how to even report to users that where it went and all of that. So I think all components of databases which are kind of dormant for a few years will come back. And clearly, I might have missed a few things here, but at least, of the newer players, I know of these three, and who knows, we'll have more. These are boring topics, but my talk has a lot of relevance on this. Whether we agree on the definitions or not, I think most of you would agree that there are two things that needs to happen today. If you're a Fortune 500 customer and your data is in Oracle, SAP, or wherever, right? It's not that overnight you're going to embrace a PingCAP or new technology. So how do you position yourself as, how do you get and then we have people with enormous enterprise experience in PingCAP. So from a Arcion perspective, and even as a even as somebody where I talk to customers every day, the theme is, hey, you got to modernize your stack. Like you can't be stuck in like old generation. You need to embrace more modern open source platforms, where I think PingCAP is doing a great job that it started as an open source. I believe that any modern platform has an edge in adoption if it is open source. So distributed cloud native open source, it's probably the three minimums to get into anything. Second thing, earlier applications were being built on top of the platform in which data was getting stored. Oh, I have something like Hadoop was a great example actually, that I will build the app on top of the file system. I'm going to build, no, that's not good. You got to build the app on the platform which serves is better. So if you have machine learning thing, you're going to build it on Oracle, for example, right? Or maybe not even Snowflake, right? You're going to build it on Databricks, for example, right? And maybe a real-time BI thing might work better on something like Startree, for example, right? Or if it's advanced thing, maybe on single store. So you really need to figure out what is the right platform. And data mobility is very, very important. I think we started the company with the whole theme that data mobility is essential right now. Then with the real timeliness and all of that. So what are the challenges in this, right? So the challenges from a business perspective is that moving data across databases seems to be easy problem. It's actually not an easy problem. It is a very difficult problem, which is why you won't see a lot of products doing that well. So what we are trying to talk here is that if you're thinking about moving business data and transactional data, the problem of moving data across database is actually very hard. Why? Because it needs to be actually very consistent, because you're talking about, let's say you have a update in a mainframe where there is a transaction that has a, let's say, $5 million worth of value. That single thing on the analytics side can change your report completely if it is a real-time report. So you can't miss the data, and you can't get into that, what the Kafka world was. So I'm going to at most once processing or whatever and figure it out for the user to. It cannot happen that way. Data has to be exactly correct on the target system. And then it's those days in 2022. You just can't have a solution that you leave it of the developers to figure out at the end of the day, to build reliability and performance. And I think other people have talked about it, the whole concept of making it easy for people to use it in terms of whether it is a managed service on the cloud or giving capabilities to the user to build a, managed service in their own environment. Those things are very critical today. Product is just not the core, as the star tree person said, the whole infrastructure to run it, monitor it is very important. So we thought of this problem for the past few years, and just in the context of modern HTAP systems, we believe that if you are in enterprise business, let's say, you're a Bank of America bank, or maybe a credit bureau like whatever, TransUnion or Salesforce even, if your data is in Oracle and all of these systems, right? How do you modernize that? Certainly we can talk about new apps being built on the modern systems, but there's a lot of business data that's trapped here, right? So we think that there is a enormous potential for the new OLTP and OLAP combined databases to go and build a bridge, or engage with companies like Arcion to build this. But this bridge is not easy to build because it seems okay, SQL on this side and SQL on this side, so everything is going to work magically. No, it doesn't work that way because data formats are different. The way to extract data from the left hand side can't be that you fire queries all the time using a timestamp column. So there is a that whole database space has come to agree that change data capture, and I don't know how familiar you are with this, change data capture is a way to in the database space to look at the redo logs and not go to the database. So just from the redo logs, capture what has changed in the database, to understand what the records and transport it and convert it to the target platform. So which means you actually are doing replication by not even going to the database, which means A, you don't have to install agents and that kind of stuff. B, the DBA is going to like you because you're not going to the database, just reading those files. So we are banking on the notion that change data capture is the most futuristic way to do database replication. But that's the core part, but you have to do a lot of other things. And another hard problem in this space is what happens to DDLs, right? What happens when you actually drop a column over here? Can you take that and make it seamlessly work? Or you tell your user, so what, column has been dropped, so everything is going to stop and somebody is going to fly, take a plane and solve your problem. So these things are one of the hardest things to solve in this space. But so this whole space, in addition to HTAP systems, we are seeing like a resurgence also of database replication, and not only in terms of this today, my talk is featured around this, but if you think of Databricks and Snowflake also, as sort of endpoints for something like, what we have built, the set of challenges that show up is enormous, So talked about some of this data movement across databases was kind of a solved problem 10 years back, 15 years back, when there are 4 databases: Oracle, SQL Server, Sybase, and DB2. You're going to do 4 databases, all OLTP, fine. Right now, you are not putting all your eggs in one basket. Like you're going to put some workload on PingCAP, you're going to put some machine learning work on Databricks, you're going to do some BI on Snowflake, batch kind of stuff, you're going to do real-time stuff on maybe single store, star tree. So the problem is not now moving data across 4 databases, but the problem is now to do seamless data movement across, at least we know of 25, 30 databases which are actively being used. Of course, Oracle and all of these are at the top, right? So the challenges are the same, except there are now new challenges. Of course, this is transactional data integrity has been there for ages. Whether you do 4 databases or 40 databases, you can't, you have to deliver the data once. It's just a business use case, right? Low latency is important now. and it was important earlier. If you're moving real time data across systems, you want every transaction to show up between the two systems within a second, or if there's a large batch update within a minute. But what is new in 2022 and in the cloud world is scalability and managed service. This was a manual problem earlier, because even 10 years back or 5 years back, okay, you know what, like, you're not running things on the cloud, it was a data center thing, so manually split the work, manually set up clusters and all of that. With cloud and what the likes of Snowflake and all of that, like, every vendor has to offer scalability out of the box. What it means, if I have 1,000 table schema in Oracle and I'm replicating it to one of our biggest partner, Databricks today, everything has to be orchestrated automatically. DBAs are not going to configure jobs in 2022. It has to start a cluster by itself. It has to manually scale. So this is the new thing in database replication that was not earlier. And the fourth part, how do you build a cloud service that has zero DevOps overhead? This is the biggest part where the every space is getting revitalized, right? If you look at Snowflake, right? Data warehouses have existed for ages. Snowflake got the whole complexity down to zero, so and they're the biggest software company, IPO. So we are taking that approach where we took the whole database replication engine and we ported it to the cloud, and now we have a fully managed service. And this theme is common across databases. If you think about the talk from PingCAP, like, okay, PingCAP cloud, PingCAP is a cloud distributed, so we have taken the same challenges that database industry faced, and we figured out that the same challenges are true when you talk of replication also, because connecting across databases, a lot of common things. So we started Arcion 5 years back. Like any product that has to do something with databases, you have to spend a lot of time to build v0.1 before people can actually use it, because this is like going to OLTP databases like Oracle and stuff. You can't build a product that just breaks, right? So so what we have is, I talked about zero impact, which is we are a fully agentless CDC platform. We don't go to the database to gather the changes, so we look at the transaction logs. We're a platform that guarantees consistency, and you don't need a master's degree to start our pipelines. It's just a few config. If you use our managed service on the cloud, you don't even actually have to deploy a cluster yourself. It's all under the hood. It's a kind of serverless thing. We have support for 25 data connectors, and obviously, I'm at the conference today, so we have to announce our partnership with PingCAP. I have a demo, in a few minutes where I'm going to move some data from Oracle to. I will show you a recording of a pipeline that moves data from Oracle to TiDB. Sorry. Yeah. We are cloud-based. Couchbase. We do not support Couchbase yet. I think it's coming soon. That's a good point. It's a popular database that we don't support. So we are working on that. I don't have a release date, but yeah, I think that's something that we have some interest to support.
This is the databases vendors you read from, or you write them?
Some of them, most of them are interoperable, but I think on our website we have that exact matrix of there are certain databases we do not support as a source, or so some of them are pure sources, some of them are pure sinks, yeah, but most of them are both. For example, I can pick up one which is not target source, maybe it's hardly. This is not a target for us, Elastic. We only support it as a source. So just, and Oracle would be everything, all the pure. So I have a, we don't want to keep the talk boring, so we have to propose something new to the audience. So here is something that I want to propose to our HTAP admirers, like, hey, instead of talking about, okay, everything has to be modernized, this, that, and making it high level, like, can you propose something? So there is an architecture idea, that I've been proposing for a few years with, hey, how do you go to a real customer and propose something that's something they can implement in a few years? I think this is something that people can implement in a few years with something like PingCAP. You can go to a bank and say, I'm going to rip out like mainframe and Oracle that you want it to be, migrating all of Oracle to PingCAP. It's not going to happen. So you go to them and say, hey, let's try this new product. It's distributed, it's scalable. However, use it as a system of access. What does that mean? It means whatever writes are happening, keep it here in your system of records. But whatever new apps you are building for reads, you kind of put it on the new system. How are we going to do so? Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, question.
Yeah, please.
So why, the HTAP here is more interesting. Why not considering other specialized ODAP systems? Because they probably perform much better in terms of query latency.
Let me come back to that quickly. So the use case is any transactional read has to go to on the right hand side. So if you are doing like, let's say I'll go to the real use case in a minute. So a lot of financial services, insurance, healthcare, and credit bureaus, they will need transactional reads, which is your data may be behind, but it's still accurate as of 2 minutes back. So like sometimes you have your banking app on your phone, the thing that you did on a computer is not showing up right away, but you refresh and it comes back within a second. So data has to be transactionally accurate, but can be few seconds old. So we're talking about that kind of apps here, and naturally this new platform has to have transactional capabilities, has to be ACID compliant for any of the reads to happen here. I'm not talking here about a BI application. I'm talking about like an actual transactional app that a bank would do, or like come back to that. So if you log into, let's say, a bankofamerica.com, right? You go to the account and you want to see what has happened, right, in your account. That is actually a lot of transactional information, which is not kind of BI, but still is a transactional read. So we are talking about that kind of use cases, and if you think of a credit bureau, right? Credit bureaus have a lot of this kind of information that has to be secure, transactional, but it's not like an analytics thing. It's like consumer information. And a very new use case recently is for something like Tesla actually. So a Tesla consumer today has no way to get real-time information about their car, even though the car is actually generating a lot of real-time information. So I think there are a lot of use cases that are coming up with this. So coming back to your point, some systems could have better query latency, but those systems, you need to have transactional capability, because I need to take transactions from here and put it here. This serves as a transactional cache, for the lack of a better word.
But because that part is implemented on top of the operational logs, right? That's done by the CDC.
Yeah.
You're still disconnected from the operational database anyway.
Yeah, so we have I'm talking here about any vendor here, even Golden Gate, if they support PingCAP, for example, tomorrow, not just Arcion, but you need to be able to pick up the full transaction log from here and replay it here. So, and this system should also guarantee the same transactional behavior as here, to the extent that the application needs it. Otherwise, you just can't put a Snowflake or Databricks here. We are looking here at an ACID compliant database, which PingCAP obviously has, now multi-raft and all of that. You get the whole spectrum of distributed transactions and some kind of querying capability here. We can't put a Databricks or a Snowflake here because it's not designed for that use case. But HTAP systems definitely are designed for that use case, which I'm very interested in HTAP systems primarily for this use case. Obviously, there's a benefit of PingCAP in some way I've talked about. Okay.
Just a quick question on the one. Do you think when customers adopt this, they have in their head that like, oh, I'll eventually get rid of the legacy, or do you think they're just like, this is great, I'm just going to leave it like that forever?
Good question. Are they thinking about fully migrating? That's our, yeah. So I think it depends. So far, I have not seen, and this is me as spending 10 years in Sybase SAP and 5+ years in Oracle. I have not seen a single database yet, which is you can turn on a magic button and then Oracle or DB2 can just go there although I saw a Twitter feed this morning, like somebody said there's a magic button now to move from Oracle to Postgres, nothing like that exists, because the business logic is different. You have to rewrite all the stored procedures and everything. So how do you get to the customer now? Are you going to wait for all the stored procedures to be migrated in 10 years? No, you can go earlier and serve the customers better. This is like running a sidecar and then hope to get. So the migration aspect is there, but it's just too hard. I mean, I've talked about the flexible at-scale deployments. I honestly think, I mean, this is very debatable, right? Silicon Valley is living in a world where everything has to be on cloud managed service. I think any infrastructure company should have all the models. And I think PingCAP, Startree, they all single store, they all have that model where you can actually run it in your own environment. A OLTP-ish database which just runs on cloud, I think it's very limiting. Although you can talk about all serverless and all those cool things, but a lot of customers would want to run it in their own environment.
Why do you think that they're limiting? I thought that the cloud is going to provide scalability.
So here is the, no, when I mean like cloud, I mean here a cloud managed service which, like Aurora Postgres, for example, right? You can't take Aurora Postgres and run it in your own AWS VPC, right?
Why would you do that if you can run it on the cloud?
Why would you do that? If you are a bank, you may want to run it in your own AWS VPC, all of it. So.
Then it can be both for other reasons like security, right?
But it can be both cost as well as really low latency. That's actually easier to get in your own.
There is a company that just migrated from managed service to their own MySQL. Hey, guys, so there's I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying infrastructure needs to be flexible. If infrastructure is only on somebody's managed service, that could be great. I think Aurora has more than whatever, like 500 million, 1 billion in revenue, whatever, right? But at some point, I'm sure there are customers wanting to run Aurora Postgres in their own. When I mean cloud here, I'm not saying, running your own environment. This is like cloud managed service. So, I like companies like PingCAP and Single Store and Startree where, hey, you want to run in the cloud, it's fine. You run your own environment in the cloud, we also have that option, because that is where I think the true benefit of, and it's also about the architecture of the product, I feel companies that offer all three, they have a better architecture even on cloud, because that means that you have really thought it through, that you can run it in a Kubernetes environment also. If companies say I can only run in cloud, sometimes I doubt their architecture, like, who knows what you have done inside that you can't even, because you have Kubernetes now, which gives all DevOps teams to run any architecture, and then I think the Startree guys has a great article on build your own cloud, So you have companies demonstrated it, it's not like not. Cool. So is there a real use case that we can do? Sure. I think we can do a lot of things like this, where meaningful data, business data can be spread across multiple OLTP databases. You can bring all of that in modern HTAP systems and you can build new apps. This is possible today. You don't have to migrate everything. You don't have to rewrite your PL SQL, you don't have to rewrite your COBOL programs, keep them there. You can convince your customers to move the data, have it transactional accurate. Of course, you need to as a good CDC vendor for that. So, but you can do that. We have done that with, one of our partners, Single Store, actually, some of these things. So I can say that in presence of Dave. So yeah. So I will actually, in the interest of time, so we have a demo today. So it's going to run a little fast, but what it is doing today, everybody is talking about TPCH. I don't want to explain what TPCH is. So we took TPCH, and the demo is actually going to move a lot of data. First, it is going to, let me explain you. Will it work? It stop. Okay. So what the demo does, we have a bunch of TPCH tables on Oracle. So on TiDB, there's nothing. So when I started the Arcion product, first it's going to create the tables on TiDB side. It's going to move the snapshot, the historical data, and then we are going to do some transactions on Oracle, and within a few seconds, those transactions will show up in TiDB. And I like TiDB now because generally when we onboard a new partner, there's always like a struggle to get these demos up and running. So my engineers told me TiDB is cool because it worked in one of the very first attempts because it's MySQL compatible. So kudos to the team, and you can see it's pretty fast. We actually not put a lot of effort in the integration. It's just the v0 point whatever, right? But you can see that I do like 1,000 rows, 100 rows update will show up in TiDB real fast, and we'll show the queries also to make sure to make you believe that the data actually came in, right? Oops. Okay, it started again. So so we have something like the filter table where filter where we you can configure like what tables and what columns you want to move from one database to the other. This is the Oracle thing, and this is the TiDB thing. Username, password here is in plain text, but this is for the demo. But in general, you encrypt it in a key store and all of it. So this is how you specify in a YAML file what tables and what columns you want to use, and yeah. So we'll start the thing by showing that I think the table these are the update statements that we'll run. So we started the whole thing. We can I'll not go into the details of the product now, but what is showing you here is that on the TiDB side now we have started doing some activity. So all these tables got created. So this is more than TPCH. We actually created multiple orders table just to show that the thing can scale. So as you can see here on the TiDB side, we created the database. We actually moved all of this. It's done. Some of these have like 100,000 rows. It was pretty instant. And we'll go to the CDC part. So these are all update statements on 3 orders table, and we are going to change one column to TiDB demo 1. So here you can see that that particular value is not present, its count is 0. So when we update it, you're going to see that should be 127 rows. So we did the change in Oracle. So we picked up within a second, and then I told you TiDB is fast; it will show up soon. I wish I could do this live. So it's pretty instantaneous, and it's actually pretty fast. And when you run these queries again, you can see that the 127 rows. Actually, it was pretty seamless. And then we have some deletes and inserts, that will show up pretty quick. So the performance is very good, what we have seen so far, going from other databases to TiDB. So we're very excited to I think we'll have the official partner announcement soon, but I'm very happy to do this work with. So as you can see, the delete was also pretty instantaneous. So we'll also do an insert just to show that all the operations, right? So yeah, I think that's the end of demo. We'll
Can I ask you a question?
yeah, please.
So how do you handle the initial snapshot of the database?
So how do we handle? I think there's so we have intertable parallelism and intra-table parallelism. So depending on each database, we'll try to find out how we can logically partition the data and physically partition the data. For example, Oracle, right? Oracle has a lot of partitions, subpartitions, named partitions. So there's a physical partition of the data that you can parallelize. So we'll figure out, we have, let's say, 32 cores, and we have to split this table. So we'll do this 500 partitions in Oracle, mapping to 16 threads in our product, and then it's all scheduling and all of that stuff.
So at the initialization time, you do have a snapshot.
Yeah.
To make copy of all the
Yes.
database.
Yeah.
Second question is, do you find all the database connectors by yourself, or you leveraging some open source?
Very good question. We wrote everything inside the company, just like single store TiDB. Fortunately for us, actually I'd say it's fortunate there is no open source product to piggyback on. So we built everything from scratch. We haven't released anything in open source yet. We may sometime next year. All our connectors are homegrown, and which is why you can see that it's fast also.
So the other side of the question, are you open source your own connectors?
We haven't open sourced anything so far, but we don't know what's there in the future. We may open source some connectors, but right now there are no. There is a trial version that we have that people use for a month or so to figure out things and all of that. But beyond that, we don't have any open source. We have a cloud version which is more like pay as you go, so it's not locked in for a year or so.